Today is June 27th, 2009. I am Andrea Mott. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Dickinson, North Dakota. Can you please state your full name, including maiden name?
Maryann Fichter, and the maiden name is Dahl, D-A-L-L.
And when and where were you born, Maryann?
To say the truth, how I should put it, it's between Mandan and New Salem, by Crombutte. You know where that is? Well, that's in between there. You know, a church parish is named Crombutte, and that's, around close by,
And have you ever heard an interesting story about your birth?
If I heard?
About your birth? Have you ever heard an interesting story about...
Not really. I heard where the house where I was born, but not really that there was anything special, to talk about, And I was born at home in a house, and my mother was a midwife, and another lady came to the house where I was born, to help out. Yeah.
And can you please share some of your earliest memories with us?
From that place there, I have no memories. I was too small.
What is the earliest thing you can remember?
Maybe I was 4, I don't even know, when we moved to another place, but I haven't got much memory of that place. Only what I can remember from the second place is where we moved away with the buggy, that I can remember, And then I don't know what Mother had on the wagon, but it fell when we went over the creek that went into the water. They had to get it out of there. This is what I can remember from there. And then when we was at that other Schneider place, from there I can remember a little of the buildings and how the farm was shaped and all like that, whatever there was, Mm-hmm.
Was that where you moved to, or was that a neighbor's house?
Huh?
Was that a neighbor?
No, that was the place we lived in.
Can you describe it for us?
What do you mean?
The farmstead with its buildings. Let's start with the house.
Well, the house had a hallway, a kitchen, and I think at that time they said a stoop, but it was a living room, and it had a bedroom. This I have, That's what the house had, and then going to the east, it had they called it a summer kitchen where we went. It was a granary, I think that's what it really was, And the barn was still a barn with a mud-covered, whatever, what would you call that?
Sod?
Sod, yes, that's what it was, the barn, And I think the only thing that I can remember of the buildings there was a chicken barn yet, And I maybe was there at that place. I didn't go to school yet. I know that much. I know I was not in school yet. And then we moved to another Sander place, And from there I started school then.
And how old were you when you started school?
I couldn't tell you, most likely 6 years old. I really don't exactly know how old I was, And I don't know the year either.
Do you remember how far you had to walk to school?
Oh, no, not far. It was just a little ways over the hill. That we had it easy going to school. We never got hold.
Even in the winter?
No. In the winter, there were the neighbors that were further. They picked the whole bank up and took everybody home,
And can you tell us what the school may have looked like? What kind of a school was it?
Oh, like them old-fashioned schoolhouses that we have out on the country with that broken roof, windows on the side, a hallway. It wasn't that, and the coal shed was built onto it. And then we had the toilets outside. That's what we had there.
And do you remember any of your teachers at that time?
Emma Shimp, I can remember. She was boarded by us, by my folks. And there was another man teacher. His name was James, but the last name I don't remember even no more.
And when you were going to grade school, can you tell us about how many students would be there too?
Oh, students, I think we sometimes had up to 30 children in that school. Yeah. And some of the names I still remember and some I don't.
Who do you remember?
I can remember Rose Markle, the Großgebauer children,
And were these friends of
Gratzes, yeah, Getzes. You know, it takes me that long to put them together. And there were some Kautzmans, you know. There was a lot of children there. Mm-hmm.
Now, Maryann, let's get back to school. What did you think of school at the time? Did you enjoy school?
No, I didn't like school. I really don't like school. If I would have liked school, I would have made the 8th grade. This is where I only got to the 6th grade. And then they didn't send me, and then mother was getting older. They kept me home to made me work. That's what happened with my days of school.
Did your teachers, when you were at school, did they treat children from different social backgrounds or ethnic groups differently?
I didn't think so. I thought we were treated alike. And I don't think that we ever had a teacher that we didn't like, you know.
And can you describe the attendance situation at school? Did students stay during harvest time, or did they go home and help?
Oh yes, at that time when spring's work was, especially the boys, they had to stay home and help. And in harvesting time, you know, I don't even remember if school was started or not, or if there was still harvest, you know, at that time. You know, at that time the children, and lots of times like the girls, on some days they had to stay home and help the mother on wash day and like that, you know. We had to stay home and help work, you know.
And can you describe what wash day was like?
Oh, wash day was something like that. You had to build a fire, carry the water, rub it with the washboard. And you had some people had no wringer. Some people did, you know, to wring the clothes. That was hard.
Did you have that job?
Oh, yes, I had that job to wring. The worst of it was, I'm sure glad nowadays the men wear shorts, no more underwear. They were so big and hard to handle, you know, to wring out. Just take a men's underwear, you know, a whole suit to wring that. Can you imagine? I can. That was hard.
How long would it usually take to do all of this laundry?
Well, usually the whole day went in, you know. You started with the white clothes and you went down the line, and that's what it was. And as I say, like the water, you had to put a wash boiler you had, and some people had 2 of them on, you know, for more water, you know, to have hot water, you know. But most people only had 1 wash boiler going, and sometimes kettles, you know, or tea kettles, you know, to keep the water hot, you know. And then the clothes, at that time, most of the white clothes was boiled. You know, like the dish towels and that had to be boiled. If not, they didn't get nice, you know.
And what about ironing? Did your family have to iron its clothes?
Yes, everything got ironed. And no electric and no gas irons at that time. You had to have them set irons, they called. You put them on the stove and made them hot. When the coal were burned down, you put another coal on and started again and kept on. And that was almost a whole day affair. You know, to get, and we had even the dish towels. Some people didn't iron everything, but where I grew up, you had to iron.
Did you ever burn anything?
Oh yes, that happened. And all of a sudden you took it, that iron, you always had to have a rag when you took it off the stove, you know. You had that rag and you wiped, you know. And sometimes, you know, that it was pretty hot. And then when you tried to iron, you know, you sort of had to lift and it sort of till it was a little cool.
So it was a long process.
Huh?
It was a long process then.
I think the whole day, it was a tiresome day. The ironing was hard, you know.
Did all of your sisters help?
Oh yes, everybody helped. One thing the men did not do that much. They carried you the water, you know, but for otherwise the men didn't do that much. In my house, the men didn't cook. It was just the women that cooked, cooked and cleaned. And I think the men could do it too, but they had so much work outside. They could not come in the house and really help. They helped along, but not like the men are in the house cooking and doing everything.
And did you have a big family growing up?
No, by the time I was the last of 14, there wasn't that many home. We were only, there was one of my brothers was still home, and then 2 sisters. And there's one sister that went for a nun's. By the time I was quite small, she left too, you know. It was just Bertha and me that really were at home together. So there wasn't that much, you know.
And did you know your other siblings well because they had left?
No, there's some that stayed in Russia. When they came over, they stayed in Russia. Them, I never got to know them. There was 2 sisters and a brother. They never came over here, you know. They were married. That's why they didn't come. But the single children all came over here, you know.
And did you know the ones who stayed here?
Oh yes, I knew my brothers. I had 3 brothers and 3 sisters, you know. But they were all married except the 2 girls that were not married, you know. There was, you know, for a while that we were together.
And what were the names of the brothers and sisters who stayed?
Who stayed in Russia?
Yeah.
Rose, Helen, and Joseph. And Rose got married to a Ducard. Rose got married to a Baron, and Rose got married to a Ducard. Helen got married to a Ducard.
So they married and stayed in Russia then?
Yeah, they stayed in Russia. And the boy, the brother, was not married when they left. He was going to stay with my sister and come later, and then, you know, with all the mess they had, he never made it here no more. And he got married then.
And what about the siblings who stayed here in the U.S., who came with your parents?
What about them?
Did you know them well?
Oh yes, I got to know all my brothers and sisters, although that they weren't home no more, but I still, you know, and at the end, you know, we didn't live all that far apart. We got together. There wasn't that we knew each other real well.
Was there any competition between you and your sisters and brothers?
That we didn't get along or what? No, not really. My dad always said, you don't fight, the dogs fight. So, and as children, we didn't want to be like the dogs. Really, that is just what was said to us.
And what kind of a man was your father?
How do you mean?
What was he like?
Well, I think he was the kindest man on earth. He was a kind man. And he put up a lot with us. He really did.
And how would he show his emotions? Like if he was angry or, you know, love? Or...
Well, as for me, I think he never did get angry. I really, and he never did, and I only got one spanking from him. That's all my dad ever spanked, you know.
And what did you do? Do you remember?
Well, it's a funny joke. You know, it was with the farm, and it started with a horse. And all I did, you know, I run around the house, you know, in the room that he had, and I mean, that's how Fritz makes. You know what he did? Well, pass gas. And he took me and laid me over his lap, and he took off his overshoe, and he beated me with the overshoe. Not and the beating, I cried, but that beating didn't hurt. It was more a joke.
And that was the only time you ever
That's
got
the
in trouble?
only spanking my dad gave me. But for Mom, we got a punch here, no punch there, and then you get going.
So who was the stricter parent?
Well, for spanking, Mother hits. She didn't really hit, but we knew where we belonged, you know. Just a punch and that was it, you know. Not really hurting, you know. Mm-mm. We weren't mistreated. I at least didn't think so. At that time, we maybe thought so it was, but if I think back, they weren't mean at all.
And I want to jump back to your father for a minute. What was your relationship like with him?
Oh, I could never say one time, let's play cards, that he would say no. So I think I got whatever I wanted. And then at that time, you know, like with the haul the wheat with the wagon, I lots of times, you know, between the Mandan and New Salem, there was that Judson, you know the area, you know. Well, that's where the would drive. Lots of times he took me along just for the ride. It was 10 miles, but I went along with my dad to town. And I can remember one time he brought me a nice velvet coats. Without Mother, he bought me the coat that I have a memory of, you know. And as I said, when we needed something, I usually did get, you know. We weren't that we had it overflowing, but when it got to like to say in spring, where usually at that time at Easter time, you got a new hat or new shoes or a dress. When I went and I asked, I got it.
What, do you think that's because you were the baby?
No, I don't think so. I think the others, when he had it, he gave it, they got it too, you know. Mm. No, I really don't think so. Mm-mm.
And can you kind of describe how your father coped during the difficult times?
I think he didn't. He never showed. He never showed that there was anything really going wrong. And they had very hard times at times, you know, where things really went roughly, you know.
And can you tell us where, and how he died?
How he died? Well, Mother was dead already, and he was. They both were staying with my sister Tilly Stegler by New Salem, and he was there. And being sick, he only was in bed from March, February till April. That's all that he was in bed sick, you know. Mm-hmm. Is that what you wanted?
Sort of. What do you know? What year that was that he died?
47.
And did he die from old age, or did he?
Oh, that's what they said. He died of old age, you know. Mm-hmm. He was, I think, 95 or 96, something like that, you know, when he died.
And now, onto your mother. What was your relationship like with her?
We got along real good. There was no problems between my mother and me at all, you know. She was very kind to us, you know. But there was one thing, if we wanted something and went to Mother, we always had to go to the dad.
And so, what kind of things did she teach you?
Well, she learned me to clean. to cook. I think to get along with other people, for sure.
And where was she born?
They were born in Russia. We were talking this morning, I forgot now. No. One was born in Katharinestal and one was in London, but I always get mixed up with them two.
And when did she die?
In 44.
Do you know from what?
She had cancer.
Was she in the hospital here in town, or?
And she never was in the hospital. She was with my sister, you know.
And how, you mentioned a little bit about the discipline that your parents would give you and your siblings. Were there any other ways they would discipline you?
No. Not as I said, the spanking only got one from Dad. And we knew when our dad looked at us, we knew what we had to do. He didn't have to say a word to us. I don't know why it was that way. And he didn't hit or anything. Why did we know what to do? But the looks they gave us, we knew where we belonged.
And who do you think influenced your life more, your mother or your father?
Who I liked better?
Who influenced you more, do you think? Who influenced you in your life more? Who had a bigger effect on you?
I think it was about the same.
And do you know how your parents met?
Not really. At that time you didn't hear anything what the older people did. Really, you didn't, you know. And if something went wrong, even at that time, the children, we didn't hear what the children nowadays hear. You know, the children know everything, but we didn't, you know, at that time. And I think I'm glad it was that way.
And did they have a happy marriage?
My folks, yes, they really did. They got along real good. There was no quarreling or like that in our house.
And what did your parents do for pastimes?
Well, what did they do? I have to think so hard for pastime. They go visiting, and they played cards. At that time, the women didn't play cards that much, but the men, they met and the cards had to get on the table, you know. That's about what they did, you know. And like some of them, they liked to dance, but my folks didn't dance.
Did you ever learn to dance?
Oh yes, I couldn't. The music lifted me up. I enjoyed. All of us children did like to dance. Mm-hmm.
And did any of your siblings teach you how to dance, or did you learn somewhere else?
We did at home with this. Like my sister Bertha was older, you know, just at home, and where other children got there, and that's how we learned to dance, like the waltz, the polkas, the 2 steps and 1 step. We learned all of that. We learned at home. We didn't have to go to school.
And where would you go to dances? Were you allowed to go to dances?
Yes. At that time when you danced, it was more in a house party or a church fair. That's about what the dances, you know, were. Weddings. In some places when they had name stays, there they also danced, you know. Not all over, but some places they did, you know.
Well, since we kind of touched on holidays, I want to talk about that for a second. We'll start with names days since you mentioned that. How would your parents celebrate, or whose names day would they?
How they celebrate? Well, in our house it was, my father's name was Kundrat and hers was Catherine. And first was Kunrads. They were one day after the other. That's how the names they went together, you know. And that was then at the house. They'd have a dinner, they'd have a supper, and a lunch. That's what they served there, you know. And it was more simple food, you know, nothing special, you know. The men would play cards, the women would eat sunflowers. That's what went on those.
And what kind of card games did they play when they got together?
Well, when they were well on the names day, there was always enough men. They played that West, whatever they called it, you know.
And what about birthdays? Did your family celebrate birthdays?
No, in our house there was no birthday celebrating. And there was no special gifts or anything. A birthday came and it went, you know. Mm-hmm.
What about Christmas? How did your family celebrate
Christmas was celebration, so was the New Year's and Easter's, you know. It was, you know, a little better food and some specials, you know.
And let's start with Christmas. How did your family celebrate Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve? Well, most of the time I think we got to Mass, you know, on Christmas Eve. And that wasn't in the evening, that was at 12 o'clock in the night when you went to...
And what was Christmas Day like?
As I said, the only special that I can remember that the Christmas like company or go visiting and some food, chicken soup mostly, you know, chicken, something like this, specials what they had at that time, you know.
And was that the only type of food they would make, was the chicken soup?
Oh no, there was but at that time chicken soup was really a special. But there was meatballs and different things, or ham, you know, whatever. You know. Ham not as much, you know, at that time, you know, like it's now.
And what about gifts? Did you ever get gifts on Christmas? Like presents or anything?
No, they didn't exchange. What the children usually got, you know, was a bag with candy and peanuts in it. That's what was, and sometimes there was an orange, you know, special, you know, that you didn't always get. Apple you usually got all winter long, but orange you didn't always get, you know.
And what was your favorite thing about Christmas?
Huh?
What was your favorite thing about Christmas?
I don't think I had a favorite thing. I really don't think so. There was, you know, as I said, there was no favorite. Everything was okay, I think.
Now, we'll go to Easter next. How did your family celebrate Easter?
What was Easter like anyway? They dyed eggs. That was that always had to be. It was the egg dyeing. And as I say, before Easter, you know, we always had to go to church, you know, all them 3 days or whatever there was, you know. And you got to church. And then to tell you the truth, being we were out like on a mission, you sometimes on Sundays didn't get to church like we do now every Sunday. There was no priest there to go to church.
So how often were you able to go to church then?
Well, when we lived at that New Salem area, there was only once. We got to church almost every Sunday, but not to our parish church, let's put it the right way. Because there was no church, you know, all the time.
And during Easter, are there any other things that you can remember? Would your mother make something specific?
Oh yeah, the boska. You know what boska? Oh, you don't know the Easter bread.
Can you describe that for us?
The Easter bread, that was a sweet dough bread that had raisins in, and they usually baked it in a gallon bucket. It wasn't baked in bread pans, you know.
Did you like it?
It was okay, but not that it really was that much special to me. And I used to bake it even when I was married, but right now I don't bake it no more. It was a good bread, you know.
And that was
You know, it
just
had
for
that,
Easter?
if you know, like anise and that in it, you know. It was a good tasting bread, you know. When you put butter on it, you know, it really tasted good.
Now,
I'm making you hungry.
what else? Would she make a traditional meal on Easter?
Ham, that was one thing that usually was ham on Easter, you know. That was the special, you know. And my mother, for baking cake and pies, at that time they didn't. It was when the girls, we started with the cookbooks, you know, like to make desserts and the such stuff, you know.
Now, the next holiday I'll bring up is the 4th of July. Did your family celebrate the 4th of July?
No, there was no celebration at all. Mm-mm.
Do you know why?
Not really. It went by. I have to take that back. They did have 4th of July sometimes where they gathered on a farm, you know, where the people, you know, and they had some, and in the evening they had a dance sometimes, you know, but that wasn't that often, you know.
And how about sausage parties or butchering parties?
Oh yeah, the butchering parties, they were when I grew up as a little girl, and they stayed as long as I was on the farm. It was a dirty job, but we had lots of fun.
Can you kind of tell us what you would do?
Well, you know, being there were a lot of people there, you know, and each one had a choke or this or that, and that's about how it went, you know. You still had to kill the animal and clean the guts. You know, that was a dirty work to clean the guts, you know, and cut up the meat, make sausage, and it sometimes went into 12 o'clock in the night till we were done. See, then we made schwadermauch, that's hatches, liver sausage, blood sausage, that all had to be boiled, you know, and hung up, you know.
Did you have a favorite type of sausage?
Well, they made all them three. They made the country style, you know. They made the leverwurst, they made the blutwurst, and the hatches schwadermauch, you know, we called it, you know. Oh yeah, that was all made. And we all ate it, but some people didn't like that cold meat stuff, you know. But I liked it. I still do.
And what's your favorite of all of those?
The country style. Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned New Year's. How did your family celebrate New Year's?
As far as I can remember, New Year's they usually went dancing. That's what it was. The New Year's, you know, there was church and to go meet. We'd go dancing. There was a special where everybody more danced than anything else, you know.
So that was a common pastime, was dancing?
Yes, it was the dancing. Mm-hmm.
Now we've talked a little bit about religion, specifically with your family going to church on the holidays.
Oh yeah, we went to church on holidays, and when we got to the town once, we even took in the weekday masses, you know, when we could. Sometimes you can't, you know, you have your work that you have to do, you know. Mm-hmm.
And how important was religion during your childhood?
Well, we didn't know any better. That's how it was, and we just went with it, you know. There was no complaint, really, that we didn't like it or this or that, you know. Mm-mm.
And what denomination were you raised? What denomination?
Well, how does it?
What type of church?
The Catholic Church. All my life was Catholic.
And what church did your family usually attend?
Well, the first church that I can remember was that at Crombute. Rosebud. That is no more Rosebud at all. And the next one was New Salem in town. Then I got married, and that was Hirschfield out north. And from Hirschfield we got to Gladstone, and from Gladstone to Dickinson. That's for a few years already.
And were there any specific seating arrangements?
Huh?
Were there seating arrangements in the church?
To seat?
How would they seat people in the church? Were the men and women together?
Oh no, at that time the women were on one side and the men were on one side, and the women had to have a kerchief hat or something on at that time. Mm-hmm.
And what did the kerchief signify? What did that symbolize?
I don't know what it really meant, but the women didn't go bareheaded to church. You know, that came later on, where they only start going, the women, without having something on your hat, you know. And we still wore hats when we, in 60, I still wore my hat to go to church. Mm-hmm.
And where did the children sit?
Oh, what they wore?
Where did they sit in
Well,
church?
the girls, again, were on the women's side, and the boys on the other side. And then from the church, it started out from the smaller children, and that's how it went back to the older people. Mm-hmm. They weren't mixed.
And what were some of the religious activities that you participated in? Did you go to any church schools or anything of that sort?
If we went to any, oh yeah, we had to go to catechism in spring when school was out. We had so many weeks, we had to go to our catechism and Bibles, you know, to study, you know. And we, even at home, there was more taught. See, that is one thing my dad really did a lot, out of the catechism and the Bibles, you know, in the evenings, in wintertime, summertime, they had too much work, they had no time for that. But in wintertime, we really, you know, and I got to the point where I could read German a little, you know, being through those books, you know, and, you know, I forgot everything.
Do you still speak German?
Oh yeah, sometimes the tongue doesn't want to turn, although that I don't know the English that well, and the German doesn't go.
And speaking of language, what language did they have church services in?
German. German, my folks could not speak English. That's when I got to the school and I wanted a pin, and I couldn't ask for the teacher what I want.
And so you were at school before you learned how to speak English?
Oh yes, I didn't learn at home, you know. In fact, we didn't even learn in school the English. We weren't supposed to outside, but when us kids got outside, the German, when they had to, that's all we were. And when we were in the schoolhouse, you couldn't use the German. You had to speak English.
Did you get into trouble for speaking German?
Not really, you know. I think they maybe told us not to, but they were kind and let us pass it. And I think the teachers knew that outside everything went. And I think some of the teachers were German too.
Were they young?
Yes, they were. Most of them, I think they were all single people. As far as I can remember, they were all single people.
Now, I'm going to go back to religion here for a minute. Were there any things that your parents restricted you from doing because of religion?
No, not really that I can remember of. No, not really. Well, all the Catholics, we couldn't eat meat on Friday. If that's what you want to know, I don't know. But that was our religion. Everybody didn't do that. But nowadays we can have meat on Fridays in those days. We have some days yet in Lent where we don't. But otherwise now we can. We're not restricted from any of that no more.
And was Sunday meal different than other meals during the week?
Well, the Sunday meals usually was with a chicken soup. That was more of a specialty. They kill the chicken and they cook soup. But it wasn't always. Sometimes it was and sometimes not. Otherwise it went about the same. Mm-hmm.
And what was the typical meal for a church celebration?
What they served there.
When they would have church celebrations?
Well, I think most of the time when they had dinners, it was the soup and the chicken, and the suppers again was meatballs with the potato salad, but not the fruit salads at that time. Fruit salads, but potato salad and cabbage slaw. See, those were meals that really cheese, brick cheese, like that was quite often served. Mm-hmm. And at those places, there usually for dinner went pie, and for supper was cake, to go for the dessert,
And how did your family respond or react towards death at that time?
To what?
Towards death? What was a typical funeral like then?
Well, I don't think they were any different. Would you say? I don't think.
Can you describe?
Huh?
Can you describe what they would do?
What they did? Well, it never was in a place in town. Like a funeral was always out at the home. The person, it wasn't at the funeral homes. They were out where they lived. It's where they kept them till they got buried. Is that what you wanted to know? Yeah.
Do you remember anyone dying when you were a child?
What?
Anyone who had died when you were a child?
Oh yeah. I can remember one of my uncles that died. And then, I was already when my sister Bertha. I was about 14 years old when she died.
What was that funeral like?
Well, not any different, I would say, than what it is now, But as I said, you didn't go to town. You were out, when they put them up, I haven't got the word, to say, they kept them at home. It wasn't that they took them into town to have them impalmed or whatever you call it, They would come out, like for my sister Bertha, they came out to the house and did that work, to get her ready for the coffin.
The preparation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, is there anything about religion or funerals that you would care to add?
Well, I don't know. The only thing I can remember is to say we had to go to church. We had to keep whatever our rules were, But for otherwise, there was nothing different than what we're doing now.
Now I'm going to move topics a bit. I'd like to talk about daily life, what day-to-day life was like on the farm. And we touched on it a little bit with laundry.
What the daily lives were like.
Like, how did your family keep the house warm during the winters?
In the kitchen was the cook stove that kept the rooms, and there was a heater, them coal heaters. I don't know if you know how some people don't know what a coal heater is. That's how they kept warm. And sometimes it got pretty cold. When that fire burned down, Like in the night, sure, the stove didn't go out when it was really cold and windy. It wasn't the warmest in the house. Sometimes it happened, like the water basin or the water pail that they had said got ice on. That's how fresh it got. But we didn't mind. You know, then to cover up, we weren't cold because they had them feather tackings, you know. They kept you warm.
And what about keeping the house cool in the summers?
There was no house cooling. You just, when it was hot, it was hot. You opened the window and that was it.
And how often would your family have guests?
Yes. In summer times, they went visiting to one place to the other. In winter times, they sometimes in the evenings they went to play cards like that, you know.
And where, this is going to be kind of a fun question, where did you go to the bathroom?
The bathroom, that's a good story. Where I was, we always had a toilet, you know, to go in outside toilet. But some places, you know, you went behind a barn or a chicken barn or whatever it was, and that's where you had to do your job. But where I grew up, we always had a toilet. But there are places there that had no toilets. Mm-hmm. It was awful. No privacy. And there were, you know, the people were different. There was privacy. The people knew already when you went out, you wouldn't follow them. You let them go there where they wanted to go, and they still had their privacy.
And did they use anything specific for toilet paper?
Not really. Not really. We had no toilet paper till we were at the farm. You know what paper they used? Catalog paper. That's what they used. I'm getting back to it, you know. That doesn't work nowadays no more.
And what did the outhouse look like? Do you remember?
Well, the outhouse usually had the seat, two bigger ones, and then they had down a smaller one for a child to sit on. Yeah, that's about what that outhouse looked like. And when we were on the farm, we could take the hose and hose it down. But when I grew up at home, the floors and the seat got washed, but otherwise nothing else got washed in the outhouse.
How often would they move it?
Not very often. That really, you see, when that outhouse stood, they made a whole duck down, you know.
Do you know how deep they made those?
Oh, it went down, not quite like this house here, you know, where they made a hole down, you know, and that lasted quite long, you know. And it sometimes did get moved, but not very often, you know.
What about bathing?
Bathing was another story. You didn't bathe every day. You were just like I shouldn't say like the pigs. Don't write that down. Yeah, no, really, it was different. There was no privacy to go and wash, you know. I don't know how we really got by, you know. But we still, on Saturdays, they brought the tub in, and you would wash in the wash tub, you know. But it wasn't every night. In the evening, they'd wash up and wash their feet, you know, and that's about it, you know. And then in wintertime, that wasn't every night either. But in summertime, like when you worked, it was every night where it did wash up and, you know, clean, you know.
And was there a specific order of who would take a bath first?
Usually that was another thing. You didn't get clean water for each one. You started by the smallest one, and I and my husband always got less. And I think that's how it went all over. How much water would if you needed to wash, and you had no bathtub. That was another thing. But at the end, they already had them folding bed tops. If you ever seen any of them, some people had them. And then some people even had like the Dietrichs, and some people they had a bathtub in the room, that you could wash. But we always had to use the tub till we moved to town.
And did you make your own soap?
Oh yeah, we had good soap. There was different of making soap, but the soap we made was nice and white. It was a nice to wash clothes with.
And how did you make it?
How would you make it? You needed lye and different things, And you sort of, with the water, you stirred it till it got so thick. And then you had to have boxes where that fitted in, that give you the size of your soap, And it was bigger boxes, but then when that soap sort of got thick, you let it set for a day or whatever it was, till it was set that hard, Well, then you would take that soap and you'd cut your bars the way you wanted them,
How long would that last?
The soap? Well, we had from year to year, See, and then on butchering, you'd save all the fat scraps and everything like that. That all went into the cooked and rendered and whatever, and that went into the soap. And then over the summer, like when you cooked, like all that fat that you get in the pans and that always was put in a bucket, and that's where you made your soap with, Mm-hmm.
And how often were you supposed to brush your teeth?
We didn't brush teeth when we were little. That was another thing. As I say, some things I don't know how it was, but I cannot say we did, because we didn't. We had no toothbrushes or anything like that.
Now, Maryann, we were talking about kind of what life was like back at home. And now I'd like to talk about the food that your mother would make. Did she keep a garden?
Oh yes, we had a big garden. Mm-hmm. And at that time they start canning like beets and carrots and string beans. They canned them, so you had something for the winter.
Can you describe the canning process?
Well, the canning, first you had to clean all them jars to do the canning.
And how did you clean them?
Huh?
How did you clean the jars?
With soap and water. Soap and water, you clean them, And then, what did we do anyway with that? To can, the food, to fill them. And then you had to put them in a boiler, and I'm getting to it, in a boiler. And that you covered the jars till the water came over. And most of the stuff that you canned it, like the vegetables, they did not steam, my mother. But the meats that they canned, they all had to be steamed 3 hours. If you had one boiler full, you had to do, that's how long it took to steam those jars,
And how big were the jars?
Well, the jars even took longer, the half gallons. But most of it was the quart jars,
And what about fruit? Did your family have any fruit trees or fruit bushes?
No, we didn't have no fruit trees and fruit that. But in fall, like pears and peaches, they would buy, and they'd can too, And I did out on the farm myself. They did all that,
And was that the same process as it was to can the meats and the vegetables?
The fruit, yes, we did. You had to put them, but it didn't take that long. I don't remember the time. I'd have to go and look in the book for that, But it didn't take as long as the meats. But the meats, that took 3 hours. When you canned meat in them quart jars, you had to keep that water rolling, boiling, for that long.
And who usually prepared the meals in your family?
The women, but in my house, even though my husband didn't cook, you know, and then my dad or wash dishes. My husband helped with dishes, but my father, I don't think ever wiped the dish. At that time, that was out. That was no. And another thing, in those days, a man never took care of a baby. It was always the mother, you know. And my husband helped with the babies, but to change a diaper, I don't think he changed the diaper.
And were the meals that were cooked in the house, where were they usually prepared?
In the kitchen. Oh, in the kitchen, yes.
And what about the summer months?
Huh?
What about during the summer?
For us, it was always, some people had that summer kitchen, but we never had a summer kitchen, you know. And then the food was another thing. There was no refrigerators. First you had to carry everything in the basement, and then when you were through eating whatever, you know, that it had to be cool, had to be carried back down.
And so that was where you stored food to keep it cool?
Mm-hmm.
So was that like a root cellar?
No, just a basement cellar. But that was, well, it was cooled, but not like we are used to out of the fridge. It wasn't cooled that way. You could always spread the butter when you brought it up. So you know how cold it was.
And how would your family have their meals? What was a meal, a typical meal, like?
It was a little different than now. Like the people had to work so hard. They usually had meat 3 times a day, where we don't do that no more, you know. And besides that, they would have eggs, you know, and a cooked oatmeal or cream of wheat, something like that. That was the breakfast. Well, the dinners were different. There was with meat, potatoes, or rice. They were the suppers and the dinners were mixed up, you know, they weren't all the same, you know, but that was morely what, you know, you had your meat and potatoes and vegetables. To say the truth, we didn't eat the vegetables we eat nowadays.
What did they eat?
Well, it was more with the meat and potatoes and rice, you know, or soup, you know, and like in winter time, lots of times, and my folks, they liked milk soup. They only took the noodles, you know, or did you ever eat ribla? You know, they take the flour and they make them little ribla, you know, just little balls of dough and egg and salt, and that's where they cooked milk soup with, you know. And that was just used as a noodle, if you get now what I'm trying to say. That's what that was what they had in there, besides the liquid, you know.
And was that a fairly common soup in your family's house?
Well, I didn't like it. I usually went and got a piece of jelly bread. And one thing, if we had something that we didn't like, we didn't get us nothing extra. We had to help ourselves. But the milk soup I didn't like.
What other kinds of foods did you not like growing up?
Well, I can't remember, but the milk soup, after that the doughy stuff was cooked in, I hated the milk of the taste of the milk. I don't know what it was about it, and my folks just loved it. So you maybe would like it or not like it.
So would you say that's your least favorite meal? Was that your
Yeah, I think that is about the only thing that I can say. Otherwise, I think whatever, as far as I can remember, there were some that you liked better, and some that just like you do now too. But we just about ate everything. But when it got to that milk soup, I didn't want it.
And so, in contrast, what was your favorite meal?
That's another good question. I think we liked everything. I think we liked chicken real well, that we used to cook that old-fashioned way. You sort of fry the chicken, and then you put cream over it. I think that was something I really did like with the mashed potatoes, you know.
And what were some of the other traditional German dishes that you grew up with?
Oh, lots of flour dishes. Do you know what that is?
Can you explain it for us?
Huh? Well, if you never ate them, whenever you don't know what I'm explaining, it is we made Schupfnudler. You know that was made out of flour, eggs, baking powder, salt. I mix it with milk. Most people mix it with water. You make a Schupfnudel. Schupfnudel, was about the size of your finger. And then you'd have in your frying pan, you'd have lard, or oil, whatever you use for fat, maybe half a cupful or something of that fat. That just depended how you liked it. If you liked it more greasy or less, that's what you used. And to start it out, to cook it, you would have about 2 cups of water in, and then you would put the cover on. You would keep it covered till it was cooked and fried, crusty like. And then you open it, when it was ready to eat, And as long as it didn't fry, it didn't, and sometimes you fried and it burned. That happened too,
Did that take a long time to make?
No, the flour dishes, like even when I was on the farm, like when I was out working in the garden, about an hour to go in, and so, you had to start the fire then. There wasn't the gas stove. So start your fire and make them meals. In a half an hour, in an hour, the whole deal was over. Eating and cooking and whatever, It didn't take long. To cook that in that pan, I would say maybe, I never timed it, but I would say 25 minutes is about the longest what it would take, if it took that long.
And what other kind of traditional German dishes did you make?
Oh, besides that, we also, with that dough again, we would go and roll it out, spread cream on it, and it was about, like this. Then you would cut it in 4 pieces, and that cream was on there then. And then them other pieces you would cut about that. Then you'd fold one side this way, one side that way. Then it was a 3-layer deal. And you'd fry it the same way, That was good. That's good stuff, And then we'd make some, like with potatoes and a dumpling again too, but that we kept more juicy like. That was a good flour dish, That's what the older people ate, where they didn't have all that big grocery bill like we have now. And some of them dishes, they were good,
And what about for dessert? What would you usually make?
There was no dessert. We started with dessert out on the farm already, but when I grew up, there was no dessert. You just had your meal and you ate, and that was it.
Now, what was your family's attitude towards alcohol?
What?
What was your family's attitude towards alcohol?
Drinking? Well, this guy that was here, he's an alcoholic. But he already quit drinking in the 50s, That's what it is. But for otherwise, my dad had whiskey in the house all the time, but I never seen my father drunk. He'd take that sip and that was it, But for otherwise, there was no complaint. And the women at that time didn't drink at all. That was out.
And how often did people usually drink alcohol when you were growing up?
Well, he had his bottle. When he went to eat, he had his sip of alcohol. Not always, but most of the time. But not a full shot. Just a mouthful. That's about what I don't know, was it like a medicine or whatever it was, but I have to tell you, I never saw my father drunk, not at all. And I never saw my husband drunk. But this guy that is here, I seen him. But as I said, he went for a cure. I think it was in the I have to go back. I said 50s. It was later. It's in the 60s, going up. That's when he got the cure, and he never went back to it. He doesn't drink no more.
And did your family make their own root beer?
Oh yes, that's another thing that my folks made was beer and root beer, and I did too, but not like my folks had it, you know. Well, we didn't celebrate like them names days like they did. They usually made that for them special days, you know, to have that root beer and beer, you know. And then the men drank the beer and the women drank the root beer. The women, they were always the women. They couldn't get what the men got.
Do you remember how she made root beer?
Oh yes, you have there. You still get that in the store in a bottle. You buy that, and you takes about 4 or 5 gallons of water and sugar. You mix that. Then you had to have your bottles to put it in and cap, and it took a couple days till it was ready to drink the root beer. And the other beer, I think you had to have set 3 days fermenting in a crock, and then you put it into the bottles.
So it didn't take that long to make.
No, it didn't take that long. No, it didn't. The root beer, not at all. The root beer you made in your bottle, but it took a couple of days till it had the pep. You could drink it right away. It was flat. That's why you didn't drink it. It got better when it was aged a little, you know.
And let's move a little bit, and we'll talk about clothing. What type of clothes were common when you were growing up? What would you usually wear?
We didn't wear pants. That was one thing. No pants. We didn't, you know. And it was more the cotton clothes, you know, and homemade clothes, most of it. It was all sewed, you know. And there was no problem in our family. We all could sew for other people. So there was no problem, you know, sewing, you know.
And who made your clothes normally?
Well, Mother did some, but by the time that it was more my sisters that made the clothing, and it didn't take, as I said, we were all good on sewing. It didn't take long. I could sew my own clothes, you know. And my girls too, all can sew. They made their own clothes, you know. For the long, they sometimes had a bought dress, but most of it was, everything was, even if the bloomers that they wore, the panties, everything was home sewed, the bras. You know, we sewed them all, you know.
Mm-hmm. And where did you get the material to make the clothing?
Oh, at that time there was no time. You went to the store and there was oodles of material. Like nowadays there is no material. But at that time and almost there were wherever store you went there was, not in the grocery store now, but in others, there was always oodles of material, not like now. Now you have to go to Bismarck or whatever to find a yard of goods. No, at that time there was no problem. And you could get, there was not that, this kind of stuff, whatever you call it, you didn't get. It was more cotton, and there was a richer stuff too that they made the Sunday clothes, but it wasn't that stretchy stuff. And some of the stuff that we got for better clothes, we couldn't wash. We had to take to the dry cleaner, you know.
And were clothes ever reused?
Huh?
Were clothes ever reused to make new ones? Were old clothes used to make new clothes?
Old clothes. My mother didn't no more, but when I was married for my children, being we were poor, we got a lot of clothes from other people, and I had to remodel that. And sometimes it was very difficult. When you got a lady that had a waist like that and the girls were like that, to get the pieces out, you know. Then you know what I did? I would take this part and get this to here and this to here and put a little piece where the sleeve was and a little band down here, and that was trimming. lace or whatever, buttons on it. And that's how you work that out, you know, with that old clothes, you know.
So it worked well.
Huh?
It worked all right.
It worked, yeah, it worked, but I only tell you that sometimes if the girls had that little waist, and for the, you know how the kids need a bigger waist, it didn't fit. You couldn't, just didn't work.
And how often would you get new shoes when you were a kid?
Well, Easter was usually the time that you got dress shoes. That was when, see, on the farm, you had the dress shoes and everyday shoes. But the dress shoes usually came on around Easter time, and the other shoes came when they wore out.
I'd like to talk for a second about technology. When did your family get electricity?
My family had no electricity. My parents, they had no electricity. And we got ours in 57 only, out on the farm.
And how did this change your life?
Oh, I was in heaven. That went easy when the electricity. Then we got a refrigerator, and it just went differently, you know.
Did it cut down on the amount of time you spent doing things at home?
Well, yeah, you got done better, you know. The way we had to work, everything took longer. But we were so timed that it took that long to milk, that long, you know, you had to wash that separator in the pails and all. You were sort of timed up that everything went smoothly, you know.
And when did your family get its first car or truck?
First car? My folks, I think in 24. I'm not sure, but I think so. And a truck, my dad never owned a truck. My brothers did, you know, but my father never had a truck.
And what about a telephone? When did your family get a telephone?
My folks didn't have no telephone. Oh, yes, at one time they lived on a place where there was a telephone. And we didn't have a telephone on the farm. We had got the telephone only when we moved to town in 61.
How did that change your life?
It really didn't matter. I didn't miss the telephone. I really did not miss. And I'm no telephone person. You know, that I go and make company like that on the telephone. I don't like telephone, to be on the telephone.
And how important was the radio in your family?
Well, that's another thing. When we had the radio, by that time you had to buy batteries. You didn't play the radio all day. You played the radio for the news and for the specials, and then the radio was shut off.
Do you remember what kind of radio programs your family would listen to?
I really don't. I have to tell you, I didn't really listen to the radio. I was always busy, and I didn't pay no attention to, you know. And as I said, it was more only at the news time, and that were otherwise it was turned off. And we didn't have a television. It was Annie Marie, the daughter, in our house had the television before we had one, you know.
I'm going to move from household activities to chores. You said you did a lot of chores as a child. Can you tell us about the chores you did?
That we did? Well, in the mornings we had to get up and milk cows, get water, sometimes coal, take out ashes.
Where would you get the water?
From the well. You had to go and carry that water with the pails. And one place before I was married, we had a little wagon where 2 or 3 green cans fitted on. It was a little distance. We had to pull that wagon with the water, you know. It didn't run in and out.
And what about the coal? Where did you get the coal?
They hauled them there. They usually were in a shed. You'd go outside. Some people had them in the basement. We didn't. We had to go to the coal shed and get them,
And you said you did a lot of things around the house. We've already talked about the cooking and the washing. What about the cleaning? What kind of cleaning inside the house did you have to do?
I scrub floors, that we had to do. We had to wash not the dishes, he said. We had to do that,
And what about...
And even with the washing, sometimes a little girl that wasn't so small, like on wash day, sometimes you would go and help that mother for a few pieces of clothes, and you'd rub and soap it and get it through too, and she'd come and wring it for you, and that's how it went sometimes on wash day for a girl that wasn't, that fitted there,
Who wasn't old enough to do it.
Yes, this is what I'm trying to say.
And did you help care for your family's garden?
For her garden, what?
Did you help with the family garden?
Oh yes, that we had to go to help pick grass and hoe, Yeah, that we had to do. And another thing, we had to get, like, on the farm, you had to go and get the cows in summertime, to milk, and we had to milk,
And besides getting the water and the coal and milking the cows and working in the garden, were there any other outside chores that you had to do?
Not really that much. Well, yes, I had to help out on the fields, like shocking. And then when they hauled hay, we had to get on the box, and sort of tram that hay in, that they got more hay in when we were smaller kids,
And were there chores that you enjoyed more than others?
I think if we didn't have to do them, we sooner did none. But I think it didn't matter,
And were there differences between your winter chores and your summer chores?
No, well, when I grew up in wintertime, we didn't do the milking. That was one thing we didn't do. It was more in the summertime where they milked the cows, But for otherwise, I don't think there was anything really different. Like, well, of course, in the wintertime, we didn't have to bring in as much coal like we did in the summer times, like in winter, there was a difference there. And then for the summertime, what we had to go do to burn? We had to get out and cow cakes on the field. You know what a cow cake is? Well, that's what we had to get, and they were dried, and that's what they used to cook with.
And what kind of heat would that put off?
Huh?
Did that smell or
Yeah, it had a different smell than the wood, but it wasn't stinky then no more. It was a different smell, but not stinky,
And were you ever hired out to work for a neighbor or a relative?
Not much. Not much at all, no. The only place no. I have no place that but the others all were hired out, but by the time that I didn't have to go to work no more.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about weddings. Can you tell us how you met your spouse?
What you call a coupler brought him to our house. I met my husband, a family came and he was alone,
How old were you then?
18. I think I was 18 or was I 19? No, because I met him in spring and we married in September, and I was 19 years old then. This is how it was. So I was about 18 years old. I never figured that out, but you asked me the question and I had to think about it.
And then, was there any arranging done by the family to put you two together?
Well, as I said, that family that brought him there, they came to us it was relations that came to my folks' anniversary. And after that, I don't know what happened or what, but they came later again, and then Mel was with him, There's.
And what was your parents' attitude towards him?
To my husband? They had nothing. You mean how they liked him, or I think they liked him. As far as I know, they never complained.
And when and where did you get married?
New Salem,
And what year was that?
33.
And can you tell us about your wedding and the reception?
The wedding was a house wedding. This is the house there. That's the house. And we had a dinner, we had a supper, and had lunch, you know. Of course, the church was in the morning at 10 o'clock. At that time, there was no afternoon mass at that time.
And what about the reception? What was that like?
The food?
The reception, yeah.
Most likely chicken soup, I don't even remember. You know, chicken soup and whatever, you know, potatoes. And as I said, vegetables at that time was not that much. Pie, most likely. And I think for supper, cake must have been it. Meatballs, beef.
Was there a dance?
Huh?
Was there a dance?
Yes, the John Vetch played for our, it was just in the house, you know. It wasn't a big wedding. It wasn't a wedding like you go into a hall like that.
And was there anything unusual about your courtship or about the wedding?
Not that I can remember of.
And what about a honeymoon? Did you and your husband?
No, there was no honeymoon. You didn't. In the first place, nobody had money at that time. In the 30s, the people had no money to go on a honeymoon. I sometimes don't even know how they made it for that little food, you know, to get the people together, you know. You know, at that time, there was no money, you know.
And since we touched on the 30s a little bit, we'll talk a minute about some historical events. Can you describe the dirty 30s for us?
We had a lot of dust, that I can tell you. You'd clean your house one day, and the next morning you got up, you could take a broom and a shovel and sweep the dust together. And the place where we lived at that, you know, out on our farm at that time. That's how the dust blew.
Was that a lot of work?
A lot of work? Yes, that was a lot of work. Because there was hardly no grass, no place. I can remember the first years we were there on the 4th of July. Everything was green, but it was weeds, no grass. And on the 4th of July, it got hot and it burned everything. Everything was brown, you know. That was a different...
And how did this affect the farm?
Well, quite a bit, you know. We, as I said, we didn't realize it. We were so used and raised so differently than the people are nowadays that you just took one day after the other and you went along. That's about how you did, you know.
And what about the Depression? How did that affect your family?
I don't think that really bothered us. We still played our cards, and the children. We just were happy. We didn't know we were poor and that we didn't have nothing.
And did you experience any problems with grasshoppers?
Huh? Oh yeah, I think it was in 44. I can remember out on the farm. We stood to the door and we looked out. It was, I think, in the afternoon. Them grasshoppers, they came just like a cloud. That's how that thick they were. And then when towards evening, they would settle on the posts, like the fence posts and like that. There was just grasshoppers all over, you know. But they didn't stay. They left, they got up again and went further, you know. Wherever they landed, I don't know. I think like the way they landed by us, they landed at another place, you know.
Did they eat the crops that you had planted?
Oh yeah, there were years, yes, yes.
And how did that affect things at the farm?
Well, that was very hard. You know, when you had a crop out and you didn't get nothing in, that's why you stayed poor. You never made no headway. You always stayed where you started, you know.
And what about jackrabbits? Were those a problem?
No, not when that year before we got married out in Hirschfield where my husband lived. There were lots of jackrabbits, but by the time when we moved to the place where we lived, there were some, but not really that they were that thick, you know.
And how did you keep food on the table during the 30s?
That the food, we didn't have so much special food. As I said, there was a lot of those flour dishes that we used to make, you know, and potatoes. That's what kept you through, you know.
And do you remember the WPA?
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Not that I really, you mean this where the men went out to work? Well, my husband had a team of horses where he went out in the morning. It was in the winter time, where you usually don't do that, you know, in winter time, where they worked on the roads and things like, well, you know, you couldn't always work in winter time in kind of the snow, you know.
And how long did he do that?
Some months, I think. I don't even remember. I don't know.
What about the CCCs? Was he involved with that at all?
No, he wasn't. No. Mm-mm. I think that was a little earlier. That CC, I think, was earlier, wasn't it?
Well, is there anything else about the 30s that you would like to add?
Not that I can think of, you know.
I'd like to touch on World War II. Can you tell us how the outbreak of World War II changed your life?
No, I really don't.
Don't remember?
Mm-mm.
What about where you were? Do you remember where you were when Pearl Harbor was attacked or when they announced war?
We were out on the farm. We were home at that time. Yeah. There was a little, I think, I'm not quite sure, but I think, yes, we were still out on the farm at that time. What year was it anyway?
The World War II?
Yeah.
The outbreak of World War II, 39 to 45?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we didn't enter until 1940.
Yeah, that's when we were still, yes, so there's a little, you know, but not really that I remember that much from there, you know.
Well, move away from the war a little bit, but we'll talk about rationing. Did you have to how did your family deal with the rationing during World War II?
You know the stuff that we could buy? Well, we had stamps, like shoes. You only could get that many. There were different things, but I don't even remember what. You know, there were few of the things, and even for some of the food, we had to have stamps that we got it, you know.
What about farm machinery? Did that affect anything on the farm as far as the work?
Well, when we moved there, we still didn't have a tractor. And I think we only had the 4 horses that we worked with, you know. And it took a couple of years till we got a new tractor, but an older tractor, you know, that we worked with. And it took a little while. By years, I never paid no attention to the. And if I did, I'm forgetting some of the things. Well, then finally we got a new tractor, you know, while we were out there, you know.
And did speaking German affect you during this time, since you spoke German fluently?
The German? No, not at all. I have to tell you, one year when the first years when we got the combiners, that was in the 40 or 44 maybe it was, because it was the girl that was born in 40. We had some combiners there. And he was here in town. He came out, and then now, when he came out there, we had a girl. She was 4 years old, and she could speak English and German. when my husband took them people back into town, he says, you know what? There's a 4-year-old girl, she can speak 2 languages. You know, that was so different, you know. Well, to us it was nothing, you know.
It's just how you did it. That was
Well,
your life.
we were German and the children and went to school and they speak English and then it got mixed up.
Was anybody in your family drafted for the war?
No, no.
Was there anything else about the time period of World War II or that time that you would like to talk about?
I can't think of anything. I know we were rationed and we only had that much food, and we had only that much money. You could only spend that much and that was it, you know. That's about it. When you went home from town, you didn't go stop at the gas station and say, fill it up so much. And that was it. That's all I can pay you today. And then you usually bought the gas that you had to go to church and to come to town again, and not much visiting. You sort of had a spare that gas tank didn't run dry.
How long would that last?
Well, in the 40s, everything got better. It went up to about the 40s, something like that, you know. Then things got better, you know.
I'd like to talk for just a few minutes on the types of activities you did when you were a child. So as far as games or the things you would play, can you tell us what activities you did for fun as a child?
I can't even remember in school what the games we played. At home, we would, as I said, my dad liked cards. We played cards. That's about. But for other games, I have no that I can remember that we had games or anything like that.
Were there any in school that you can recall?
Huh?
Were there any games that you played in school?
Oh yeah, in school there were some, but I can't remember the games what they were. No, what the names even were. I forgot all that.
Do you remember who you played with?
In school?
Or at home?
There weren't that many. I was the youngest. There was nobody there. Well, for one winter, with one niece was with us. You know, well, we played together. You know, she was a little younger than I, but we still, you know, that we played together. You know.
And where was your favorite place to play?
I don't think there was a favorite place.
Did you have any favorite rhymes or sayings when you were growing up?
A what?
Any favorite rhymes or different kind of sayings that you liked growing up? Do you remember? What about any scary stories?
Telling story.
Scary stories?
Well, those I never liked, and I still don't like them.
Did you have any favorite songs?
We didn't much singing at all.
Or music?
No. We had nothing to make music. You know what we made music with?
What?
We sometimes took the comb that you comb with and a piece of paper, and we doodled our song and we danced on that. That was interesting.
So you would not say that your family was a musical family?
No. But we all liked to dance. But then my husband didn't like to dance. My husband had 2 left feet. When we got married, the dancing was more over. We went to weddings and like that, but not that the dancing, not that the music and all that I was in with.
And when you were younger, what would you call your most stressful childhood experience?
That I didn't like, or
just the most stressful thing that you experienced as a child?
what do you mean, that I had to do?
No, just your most stressful experience when you were younger. Maybe the most difficult time for you.
Not really. Mm-mm.
You didn't have any?
No, I don't think. What I didn't like, in summertime we had to go out and herd the cows where it was so hot. We hated that. To sit out in the sun. And now you go out and lay in the sun. Well, I don't want to go outside. I want to stay inside.
And what would you call your happiest childhood experience?
I don't know. I don't think that we ever were unhappy at all. I have no thinking that there was any that we weren't happy about. I don't know.
Anything that was happier than any other moment that you remember?
Not really. Mm-mm.
And what about the most adventurous thing you did growing up?
That means what?
Adventurous?
To do things?
Fun. The most fun thing you did growing up?
Not really. Well, as I said, my best time was dancing. That's what I told you before. So.
Now, Maryann, why do you think it's important to tell your life story?
What?
Why do you think it is important to tell your life story?
Why it is important? I don't know. Why is it?
What do you want your children or grandchildren to learn from this, from your history?
Well, as I said, if I'm giving you the right answer, I didn't have much schooling. But when my kids grew up, I wanted them to get to school. This is one thing I always wanted, and they all got through high school. And then I got 3 of them that got through the nursing school. And the 4th one, she was a nurse practitioner in the lab, you know. That's, you know, I went that they all got, that they really could make it, you know.
Any final thoughts or words that you'd like to share with us?
Not really.